Welcome to the Over 40 Alpha Podcast with your host, Funk Roberts.
We are live, and welcome to the Over 40 Alpha Podcast. This is episode 102 and episode number 2 of our Muscle Talk, where myself and my co-host, Flex Marks, we will talk about muscle, we'll talk about strength training, we will talk about building muscle and getting strong for men in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and beyond. And if you don't know who I am, I'm Funk Roberts. I'm a former professional athlete, third master metabolic trainer, and I also train and coach and have the Over 40 Alpha Brotherhood, which is a program specifically for men in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, where I help transform bodies with thousands and thousands of men who are transforming their bodies through workouts, nutrition, mindset, recovery, sleep, supplementation. And my co-host Flex, why don't you let the people know who you are?
I am Flex Marks. I'm a 25-year veteran in the business, a certified strength and conditioning coach. Again, same thing. I'm training guys online, in person, but I've trained everybody, from beginners to even amateur athletes. I've been doing it since I was 16, 17, got certified, love coaching people, love to build people strong and lean. So, with my program as well, my Freak Squad program, it's a muscle strength building program like no other to get people to start training a little bit outside the box, not so unconventional things, which is why I love doing this podcast, because we're going to be unconventional sometimes and strip away all the stuff.
Totally. So let's start off by, I just want to say one thing for those who are listening or watching, because this does go on YouTube. If you guys can do us a huge favor, if you get just one nugget out of this episode or any other episodes that you listened to before, please go to Apple Podcasts or iTunes or wherever you hear it on Apple and on Google Play and give this a 5-star rating for us, please. Because, we just take the time, myself, our podcast team, Flex, just our time out of the day to do this. And, we would love to just get 5 stars. It helps the podcast, it helps the algorithm, it helps all that stuff, but it really, really does do things. So go to Apple Podcasts, iTunes, because that's pretty much the most powerful out there. But let's flip the script and talk about today's topic, which is functional training. And what is functional training? What is functional workouts? Because I think there's a misconception about what functional training is. So why don't we start with you? Flex, why don't you tell me what you think, or what you think, because but what your definition of functional training is?
Okay, so before I start, I always like to explain to people there's 3 things that people look for when they're training. They want to look a certain way, they don't want to look a certain way, and they want to perform better. Those are typically the 3 things. Functional strength training is more the latter part of it. The functional side of it, it's a type of, exercises that are focusing on movements rather than individual muscles, which sometimes people get stuck doing, just bicep curl because they want to, again, look or not look a certain way. The goal is really to develop, you're trying to develop power, mobility, and things you can apply to everyday activities, and that's where I really look at functional training being like, lifting objects, climbing stairs, getting in and out of the car. I know we think, shoveling snow up here in Toronto, everyone's all, the snow, because it's not part of the repertoire. And I think what's happening with traditional strength training is we're not seeing that, conventional training doesn't always translate to be more applied to functional training, which we're going to talk about. There's the crossover. That's why some people tend to be like, and it's just the attributes, multi-joint movements, stability movements, and balanced core strength, which we'll talk about, which most people feel they do get with their traditional strength training. But here we are learning to move our body in patterns and movements like we move in everyday life.
Yeah, I think definitely the last thing you said really sums it up well, right? Like it's functional training is using movements, exercises, workouts that will translate over to everyday life, like making you optimal and optimized for everyday life. So carrying groceries, bending down to pick up your kids, over your head, picking things up over your head at work. Specifically, if you work at a job where you're, it's labor, general labor, construction, you're on the rigs, you're, whatever, like specifically a lot of those movements, so that the workouts that you're going to do are going to help you with not only work stuff, like I just talked about, but going on hikes, climbing the stairs, sitting down, getting up, just everyday movements, but doing it in a way where you're going to be able to do it feeling strong. You're not going to be in pain. You're not going to be weak. And so there's specific movements that you train as opposed to muscles, like you said, flex, sometimes you want to, you want to show muscles. And not saying we can't get show muscles in functional training, but we're focusing on different types of movements, right?
Yeah, and everything goes hand in hand. There's times where you have to shift your training a bit to work different attributes in mechanical tension on the muscles we talked about in our first podcast, and exercises really should always sort of replicate or mimic life movements and activities. We don't, because we're so used to benching and curling, and that's why we live in what we call a sagittal plane and frontal plane. So sagittal plane is when your body, if you Google and you see a photo of a body standing like this, that's where it looks like a piece of glass or line cuts the body in half. So sagittal is just like this way here, left side, right side. And then you've got transverse plane that cuts you in half, frontal plane. And then you got transverse plane, which cuts you into 4 quadrants. And that's the quadrants that we're missing. So we're not just lifting this way or pushing that way or pulling this way. We're learning to move in this way here. So, when you Google what the planes are and you see how the body is divided, you always see front and back. Well, the transverse plane, which is what functional training is those extra quadrants, where you are moving, you're lunging on a different angle, you are doing something, not always just the pushing and pulling, and the straight up and down. So we live in a very two-dimensional way when we train, and it's sort of getting people to realize there's benefits to that for sure. But also that type of training when you're doing just the straight up and down and not movements and twisting and turning and core and mobility and stability, then you end up being in that sagittal and frontal plane, which again, for most people, we all do it because the majority of exercises are in those planes,
Yeah. So for me, when I talk about functional training, like I'm in the middle right now of a transformation. I'm doing a transformation on my own body and strength and power, and so because of that, I'm creating this new functional Powerhouse program where I'm combining fundamental foundational movements, which I'm going to talk about. So it's the foundational movements. Of course, I'm a master metabolic trainer, which means I've created a certification course for teaching trainers and coaches about metabolic training. That's literally what I've built my training business on, is metabolic training. So I'm combining functional training with metabolic protocol and creating the program that is a powerful program that will not only help people build muscle, or help men, or help people build muscle, burn fat, increase strength, power, explosiveness, but also be optimal and optimize your everyday living so that you're strong and picking things up. And for me, it's like the foundational movements. So the way I break it up is the foundational movements in every single block that I've created. You have to have a push, a pull, a hip hinge, a squat, a lunge, and a core or carry. And those are literally the fundamental foundational movements, right? So those are all those movements. And by implementing those movements, you are going to be able to get a lot of things that you were talking about, flex in regards to like training, not only, in a sagittal and adding that transverse plane, not just sagittal and frontal, but you have the transverse as well. But I also think it has to do with exercise selection, because it's very easy to go, okay, I'm going to do this functional training workout, which means I'm going to have one mobility, one, core. I'm going to do something like a little bit. Like, I have a feeling that most trainers or people think functional training is like getting on a Bosu ball, or like doing all these crazy things, that has nothing to do with functional training. Functional training is movement patterns. It's the movement patterns, and making sure that you're not creating or doing workouts through, okay, I'm doing bis and tris, I'm doing legs today. I'm making sure that I've got a pull, I've got a push, I've got a hinge, right? Because we hinge a lot. We're always hinging, picking things up. I have a lunge. Everyone has to know how to lunge. Everyone has to know how to squat. We're always lunging. We're always squatting, walking up the stairs. Our gait, which is the way we walk. And then, of course, the carry, which is a fundamental. But I intertwine carry and core. Carry being able to stand up, or obviously if you're in a plank, but without any side lateral flexion, right? You don't want any side lateral flexion, because that's where you're going to, set yourself up for injury. So, again, picking up groceries, carrying your luggage, all of those things. So, functional training, again, is not like I just want people to understand that functional training is not like, okay, I got to get a Bosu ball, I got to get a balance thing, I got to get, I got to like kind of use these outside implements, because then it won't be functional. You don't need any of that at all. In fact, a lot of that stuff, I think personally, is specifically for us guys that are getting older, because we have a very small margin of error when it comes to training, because, we have to get back into shape. But we're not just getting into shape for the look, although that does become a byproduct, and that does become what we want as, we're meant. So we want to look good. We want to have the six pack. As far as say you don't, maybe at this time you don't, but I know that with working with a lot of these guys, when they first come in the program, they're not thinking about the six pack until like phase 4. And then it's like, oh, wait a minute, I don't have this belly anymore. Actually, now I do want the six pack. But we also want to be able to train so that we can go on hikes. We can work in the backyard without, having a back pain or knee pain. Because when you train functionally, you are going to train with those movements so that you don't have the back pain, you don't have the knee pain, you don't have the shoulder pain, because you are using the movements that you're going to be using all the time on a daily basis.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
No, totally. And that's why I see so many people who are in decent shape be completely wiped out, raking leaves, shoveling snow. You know what I mean? It's kind of like they're not thinking like, oh, I'm moving. And like I said, the transverse plane, which is the around plane, and you're moving in different movements. And with things like Bosu and stability balls, I always use them as accessories, accessories to an exercise. The fundamental, like the squat, the hinge, the pull, where you are training. And core, I consider core even all the muscles that go up the spine. A lot of people just sort of think sometimes it's just stuck right around the waist. That spine as well. Funny thing, you talked about the carry today. I grabbed a 45-pound plate, one arm, walked down the hall, walked back, switched arms, and it's caused my body to shift. And I was doing rounds and rounds of that today, and my core was just torched, and I wasn't sitting there doing a million crunches. Not that that's an accessory as well, but I was literally forcing my body to be sort of unilateral, like having weight on one side, which most people don't think of. They're always pushing weight together and not thinking, hey, if I switch and have weight in one arm, then you're forcing your body to work a little harder. In a pattern or a functional, especially like a carry, like you were saying, even a squat when you have it loaded on one side versus the other side. So Bosus and stability balls, those are accessories. You can always add them in as an but again, when you look at a really, really good and strong strength program, this is what you find, the fundamentals. A good strength program has the squat, the press, the pull, the hinge, the core. They're not hanging upside down, and they're not doing, all these exercises that I think you're right when you said functional. People think you have to be climbing rope and doing stuff. those are accessories to it, you know, but there will be a day where you need to climb. You might have to climb a fence. Dog is chasing you. Who knows? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Just being stronger. I've been chased by dogs when I was a kid. Over the fence, no problem. There was a time in my life I didn't train as functionally as I'd like to be. I looked the part, but I wasn't, like I said, the exercises weren't really replicating the movements in life. And as we get older, and I really want to start teaching this at young ages too, but I think we get stubborn with the bodybuilding type movements, you know, where you're just in that same plane over and over again.
Yeah. Which is nothing wrong with it. I mean, again, there's nothing wrong with this. I'm just, for me, and what I'm talking about is for us guys, as we get older, we want sustainability, right? So sustainability means, and I know that you're talking more functional strength. Listen, I've got functional hypertrophy. Like, we can build muscle, but through the movement patterns, because I think today we're going to break down what the exercises or the body parts that get targeted when we do hinge, pull, push, all of those things, because then you'll start to go, oh, okay, I get it now. I didn't realize that a bicep curl was a pull, right? Or, you know what I mean? So specific body parts are actually built because of specific movements. And so instead of, pushing and pressing all the time, which we do too much of, in fact, we should be pulling 3 times more than we press on a weekly basis. Everyone's pressing, whether it's bench press, push-ups, overhead pressing throughout the day, and we don't pull enough. We don't focus on the back.
And the reason being is we're all stuck with the way the chest looks. It's a muscle you can see. The back is out of sight, out of mind. You can't see it. You don't train it. The back is the largest muscle of the upper body. So if you're doing 3 sets of chest, you should be doing 6 sets of back, like you were saying, on the pulling. But again, when you go to the gym, a conventional gym, you go on a Monday, every bench press is taken. Everyone goes straight to the bench. And there's reasons and there's formulas to do those exercises, but you're right. People don't realize that when you start to train a certain way and overtrain a body part, then you start getting imbalances. Sure. And we're born with imbalances. We all are, just the way we sit and move. But again, you see a lot of this, the tight chest, because their shoulders have caved forward. There's no strength in the back because they're not understanding the importance of how a pull should be more dominating your workout than a push, for the most part anyways.
Yeah. And so I want you guys to just write something down. I want you to, grab your phone or grab a piece of paper. And I want you to write down these 6 movements. I'm going to add another 4 too, because I have the 4 foundational movements, but I also have an additional 4 that I implement. And I think and it's very important as we get older, like not even a question, like it's not even debatable. So again, squat. The 6 are squat, lunge, hip hinge, push, pull, or push or press, pull, and carry. But I combine them both. And I add another 4. I add rotation, because although we need anti-rotation, we also need rotation. But rotation, not twisting, but rotating. We need to jump and be able to jump and explode. We need mobility. So we need to be able to crawl. We need to have some mobility. And then, of course, we need balance and stability. And a lot of times you can get that implementing the type of exercises. But, for me, I also have workouts that have all 10 movements in the workout. Just because I think it's not, I think jumping, running, all of those that we lose as we are in our 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. I remember Angela saying to me, my wife Angela, who is a kettlebell coach, she's certified kettlebell coach. She's doing an advanced coaching course, and she's doing that course with Hunter Crine. Shout out to Hunter Crine. Who's killing the game. I actually, just by listening to, because sometimes I'm in the same place when she's doing workouts or when they're having their whatever. And Hunter's like, I feel like we're built from the same cloth because Hunter is very big on plyometrics and kettlebell training. Like plyometrics is because kettlebell. No disrespect to kettlebell people, and just one other thing, kettlebell training has this right. Like kettlebell training automatically implements the hip hinge, the squat, the lunge, the push, the pull, and the core. It's like the foundation of hardstyle kettlebell training are all of those movements, right? Like it's built into the exercises. It's the outside of the kettlebell community that's not apparent, but the other things that he implements is the jumping, the explosiveness, and Angela before she took the course was like, I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to jump again. I can't get that explosiveness as I get older because we do lose those fast twitch muscles if we don't use them. But now she's a sky goddess.
And that's all. Yeah, and that's all the importance of proper programming. So, like with your program and my program, like I'm on it right now, just looking at my program, and every your program, every phase we're switching something up. But in those phases, some phases, I have a functional muscle and power phase. I have a Metcon phase. I actually have a plyometric phase as well, because I think what shocks most of my guys is when they move to the next phase, they're like, oh, I got to go a little lighter, because now they're grouping exercises together. They're doing a squat, a hinge, a pull all in one combination versus straight sets. Right. Again, when you start doing that type of training, you're always confusing and progressing the body. So Angela's saying, I can't jump. I used to be a kickboxer. Every Van Damme kick I used to be able to do. Now, I don't plan to do it again, but I'm incorporated, even though just some light plyometric movements, conditioning the body to be, again, functional. Yes, for sure. Do I want to be Van Damme again? No, I don't think my body, that type of stretching, but I did enjoy how my body and movement was superior back in the day. And I was carrying a lot less muscle, but I was moving and implementing that. And that all comes from proper programming. Proper programming, you should be looking, when you look at a program and go, there's different phases, read what each phase is about, the description. Understand, that you can't just do always 3 sets of 12. Like I said, you'll look like 3 sets of 12. You can't always do the same thing. So kudos to her and to anyone who's just saying to themselves, I don't know if I can do this, but let me do it. And then their eyes open up and go, yeah, I need to make this part of my program.
Oh yeah, she's jumping out the roof. I'm not even joking.
No, I know you're not. That's why I'm laughing, because I know Angela quite well too.
It's insane, and so
we would be shooting all our videos together, and every time she would train, it was just everyone was just a different type of beast. I'd be watching you going, God darn it, and then you'd watch her, and I mean, what the heck? And then you'd watch me and go, what the heck? We would shoot our videos all in the same room, take notes on each other. 3 great coaches bouncing ideas off each other. But again, even with those training videos, whatever program and phase that person was in, I always feel that almost all our phases had some type of functional pattern to it. It has to be, not just straight bodybuilding,
No. Yeah. So let's dive into why. So we did mention before why, but I think when as you get older, it's again, I can't say this enough, that the importance of being able to move is not just about strength. Okay, obviously there's the strength component of it, and making sure that you're strong in the movements, right? So which means you have to have that technique. You got to build yourself up to it, which will transfer over to your everyday, being strong. Like when I get my water bottles, my big huge 1800 milliliter, 18,000 milliliter big bottles.
And you got to carry that up some stairs.
2 of those up the stairs, no problem, because I use what I'm learning. I use the same techniques as I would if I was doing a carrying up those stairs, right? Or going on hikes, or doing those things that we want to continue to do as we get older. We have kids. You want to be able to run around with your kids. You want to be able to pick up your kids from the ground, carry them, hold them, spin them around without having back pain, without having knee pain, without having all that other stuff. And so generally, the movements are designed to train the muscles that you're going to need to to optimize those moves, right? To optimize those in those ways. So you're not looking at it as I'm training bis and tris today. I'm training, again, now we're getting more into programming, but you could program something that would be like today's push-pull hinge day. The next day is squat, lunge, core day, carry day. You know what I mean? Like, or you could do upper, lower body, or you could do full. Every exercise, represents one of those movements. Or you could do strength functional training, where now you're just 5x5 plus heavier weights with the movements. You could do hypertrophy, which is more bodybuilding style, but not bodybuilding in the sense that hypertrophy you're trying to hit a specific muscle group, although that's the product.
Yes.
But you're making sure that all those movements are being programmed within the week of your training. There's power and explosiveness, like there's conditioning. So all of those things can be implemented with the right program. But if you're older and you're looking at a program, if you're a guy in your 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, you're listening to this right now and you're like, okay, I got this, and you're not using either myself or Flex's programs, which you should, because after listening to this, you'll realize that is a very important aspect. But maybe you're going out and you're looking at other people's programs, right? You get this program on an app, right? And you're looking at it and you're like, oh, this is cool. It's just whoever the program is. I asked you guys to write those things down for a reason, right? Like make sure that your programming that you're doing has exercises that represent those movements, and they're in your block, or they're in your phase, or they're in that workout. And you're not just doing specifically arms or chest. And I'm not talking about the advanced guys, because if you've been doing this for a year or 6 months, or I would even say more. But if you've been doing this for 6, 7, 8 months, then you can start to focus on specific body parts. But how many times does someone in the program who's new comes in the program and goes, every time I do a lunge, my knee hurts. So what can I do instead of the lunge? And my answer,
lunge.
You're gonna do the lunge.
You got a lunge.
Or fuck, I can't really squat. My ankle, or whatever the excuse is. And it's not just an excuse. It's something's hurting. That's probably, it's not the squat that's causing it. It's an imbalance. It's not firing up your glutes. It's your lack of ankle mobility. All of those things that. But you have to squat. Like, there's no what do I do instead? Like, those words that come out of the mouths of the guys in my program often always get rebutted by there's no instead. You're doing it. It's just going to modify. Right. And
a good point to add to that, Funk, is I think sometimes people are worried to challenge themselves. They just go through the motion. Like, you're only as strong as your weakest link. You really are. And a lot of people tend not to want to train the weak link because it's not giving them the results they want to see right away. And sometimes you need to be writing a program out or follow a program that challenges those weak links. The greatest load falls on the weakest link is what I say to clients all the time, like during the execution of a workout. And again, you can't lunge because you start with body weight first. You start with a limited range at first. By not doing it, then you're not addressing that weak link, which obviously is the quad, the glute. Something is weak in that person's knee alignment. There's something weak there. And if you ignore that, which most people do, because again, they want to see everything on the outside first, not realizing I got to fix the inside stuff first, which tends to be being weak at something, and really sitting back and addressing that. And most people don't want to address that, they just get comfortable. They're very comfortable.
Yeah. And I said something about if you've been training for like 6 or 7 months, but no, if you have been training for 6 or 7 months, but you've been doing like hypertrophy training or just HIIT workouts or whatever, that you haven't really focused on the movements, then you got to start back at the beginning when you move into functional training, because it's about the movement. It's about the movement pattern, but it's about executing the movement pattern the right way. The other day I'm not going to call the name, but I love this guy in the Brotherhood in my program. He posted a couple of videos. I believe he was posting those videos to make sure that he wasn't lazy. I think what he said was, I believe, something like, I want to make sure that I'm not lazy, so I'm just posting these. I think he wanted some critiquing, I believe. I critiqued it and I haven't gone back in, but I saw a lot of things that were good, and I saw a lot of things that needed work. And the things that needed work, my suspicion is most of the men in the program are probably doing it this way, because what happens is, even though they're all follow along workouts, I don't know if everyone's using the follow along, which they should. And if they are using the follow along, are they just going through the motion, or are they actually watching, listening for the cues? So like, for instance, for not simple, but the knee placement on lunges and squats, that knee buckles. So when that knee buckles, when you're doing lunges, right? Like, again, these are foundational movements. The knee needs to stay straight. It needs to be aligned over the ankle. And just that alone will like, oh, wow, this is a lot harder than I thought, because I'm not used to moving my body the right way, right? Because when you're comfortable, with the knee buckle, or the other thing is the squat. I see this a lot in the squats. I see that type of squat.
Yeah, they're bowing.
Where the sternum is pointing down. I always tell everybody, sternum pointing forward. So when you're doing a squat, keep the sternum forward. That's going to ensure that you're not dipping. In fact, when you're walking and doing anything, your sternum should be forward.
Yes. And you know what? People tend, because of phones nowadays, tend to have their head forward always, even when they're walking. And I tell clients all the time, make a fist, place it under, and that's what you should be able to keep your chin up on any exercise, even if it's just a bicep curl, right? You got to keep the chin up. When my guys videotape themselves too, they expect me to correct the form. That's why they've hired me. I will correct them. I always say, here's the positive, but change this. One of my guys was squatting and his eyes were dropping down a bit. I said, put that fist in there, keep the chin up. If everything's aligned, and your spine will be fine, as we say as well. But, and I think that's the difference between you and I with our coaching, is that we have a very hands-on approach with our guys. We communicate with our guys on a daily basis, weekly coaching calls. Guys send me stuff all the time where, I'm going to correct you on something. And none of them have ever come back and said, how dare you? No, they don't. No. I get that at the gym sometimes when someone, and I don't go up and correct people.
They're not paying you at the gym.
No, and the thing is, you're seeing how I'm changing and my clients are changing, and you're looking the same. It's because, again, you're not addressing your technique. You're not addressing your limitations, and like you were saying with a knee buckling, if your knee strength isn't there, you use your knee strength for deadlifting, for barbell rowing. So even though it's not technically a leg exercise, if that strength is not there, like a rotator cuff, same thing. If there's limitations on your rotator cuff because you're injured, because it's a weak link, your chest strength won't be there. So people keep pushing harder on the chest, not looking at, hey, I need to make my shoulder functional. I need to train in all areas of it as well. And I just find that's just how the industry is with most people. Where we're different is we like to break stuff down. We don't tell you yes and no without a reason. We like to explain to people the reason, because this is educational, not monkey see, monkey do. It's what I tell my guys. It's not monkey see, monkey do.
Sure. Yeah. So going back to the functional movement pattern, the very first thing you should be focusing on is ensuring that your technique is right with these movements, right? So, okay, if you're starting a program we both have these programs, but I'm just going to talk about what I'm focusing on right now, because I'm building it and I'm using it. And so the very first, you haven't even edited these workouts yet, because I just shoot out 100. They're coming. Flex is my answer, by the way, too. It's a foundation. So the very first 6 workouts are, making sure that we start with squats, but it's like the different squat variations, and we'll talk to that for sure. And making sure that, okay, is your body weight squat right? before that body weight squat, before you get that right, then you move on to adding specific loads, right? Whether it's suitcase, whether it's goblet, whether it's, well, we don't do overhead, but there's different squat, staggered squat, and then
there's so many air squats, goblet squat. When people say training's boring, you just don't know that there's so many variations just to one thing. Front squat, cyclist squat, overhead, lock and loaded squat. It's just, it's not just a squat. There's so many ways you can change just by the way you've loaded the weight. You got one arm with a weight, other arm not. Weights up top, weights at your side, weights between the legs. And then that's why when people go, oh, it's boring, it's just like, well, you just know how to do a squat. You don't understand that, the stronger your legs get, the better they will help you with just standing and sitting, walking stairs and riding a bike. That's the application in life. And that works very well with when you squat and you do different forms of it with proper technique. Learning it with a lighter weight at first. That's why there's mirrors in a gym, guys. Watch your form. Our guys personally reach out to us and we'll say, what do you think? And same thing. But again, squat for sure. Well, there's just so many variations. Nobody should ever say they're bored with any of this stuff because there's so many variations. Just, so
the knee, lunge. So just like you were saying, making sure, we just have to make sure that we have the right technique for our exercises before loading. And once we load, and then we can move into the strength portion and the hypertrophy portion and everything else. But why don't we break down some of the exercises and body parts that hit each one of those movements? Okay. So we'll start again. We just got the squats, but the squat is that fundamental movement that focuses on your quads, your glutes, and just the power, lower body power, right?
And the lower body power, believe it or not, helps a lot with your upper body. A lot of people can find their bench press gets better, their pressing gets better just from the squatting because of the amount of breathing, just getting the air in, getting the air out. And that's why when clients are like, well, I just want to lose my belly and I'm just going to do lots of abs and cardio and not realize you'll lose that by squatting and lunging and vice versa because you're involving more muscles. So again, functional fitness compound movements, the more joints you involve in a muscle, not like leg extension, I'm talking squats, then you're incorporating your hip, your knee, and your ankle. And again, same thing. A fly, you're just incorporating one muscle. But when you do a press, you got your chest, depending what angle you're on, your shoulders, your triceps. So squatting for sure. Foot placement changes things. Staggered grip. And these are all more advanced techniques, but just to let you guys know that there's always ways to build on it once you get the foundation and good lower back and knee strength and glute strength. A lot of people, have to realize that the glutes are very, very important. And not just because they look nice when you flex them, but you use them for all your stability.
Yeah, well, we need to that's a what I call what do you call it? That's a linchpin. Is the glutes, not activating the glutes. But when we talk about squatting, you said something that was very, very huge there. We're talking about movements, guys, not a body part exercise. So Flex said leg curls. Right? We're not doing leg curls. We're not doing leg extensions. We're doing squatting and the squat movement. So goblet squats, body weight squats, staggered squats, rack squats, suitcase squats, which is just holding the dumbbells by your side. Single leg squats, bench squats or box squats where you're sitting down and then you stand up or squat up. Jump squats. So there's different variations so that a functional training program will most likely incorporate all of those types of squats as you move through the blocks or the phases, depending on what you're trying to focus on. If I'm doing strength, I'm in my strength phase now. So I'm not going to do jump squats in my strength phase. I'm going to do really heavy. I don't do back squats, although that is a movement. I don't do any barbell back stuff because it makes no sense for us guys in our 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. Just puts our body in such a terrible placement, and it's such a technical movement. It's not just putting it on your back and dropping down. There's a lot of technique. There's a lot of making sure that you fill up your diaphragm with air, because the weakest link in a squat is actually your core. As soon as your core breaks down, as soon as your the pelvic floor, if you don't have a strong core and pelvic floor, as soon as that, because as you're squatting down, your pelvic floor is it's just there. If it's not strong to hold you, you're not going to be able to squat back up. You're not going to be able to push your body back up, and you're just putting your lower back and shoulders. If you don't have that mobility as we get older, we don't have that mobility like we used to. So piling on a whole bunch of weight on your back when there's a plethora of other squatting exercises that will get you the massive results. So like I said, for strength, I'm going to do heavy goblet squats. Like literally you should be able to do 25 goblet squats nonstop with half of your weight, your body weight. That's like I'm strong. Like take half of so I'm 190 pounds, maybe 188 pounds. So I should be able to grab 100, because I'm just going to jump up to the 100 pound and do 25 nonstop. Boom, boom, boom. That's pure strength endurance, but that's strength. Goblets, a suitcase squat is another strength squat variation that I would use, because again, you can go very, very heavy and you don't have to go as far down. But remember, we're talking about strength. I'm talking about strength here. If I'm moving into like a hypertrophy, then I'm going to start using, staggered squats, rack squats. I'll still use the other two, don't get me wrong, but I'm going to use it different way, right? I'll just use rack squats, staggered squats, single arm, right? Because single arm squats. If I'm going into power, now I'm going to add the explosiveness. So maybe get the goblet, low, go down slow tempo, and then explode up. Obviously, I'm adding jump squats. And then, for conditioning, the tempo is going to be faster. So that's ways I would use all of those different squats within a complete functional program. What about you?
And again, like you're doing that to always confuse the body. The body will get used to you doing a squat a certain way. Even when you start to add more and more weight, if you all of a sudden are just changing your foot positioning, you're changing where you're holding the weight at your side, up and top, and then like in a goblet squat, you definitely have to always use as much as you can in your repertoire. Same with which the next one we can talk about is the lunge. So we got the lunge now. And again, the lunge, there's another leg exercise. Front lunge. You got step ups. You got the elevated back foot can be elevated. The front foot can be elevated. Bulgarian squats. I got one of my private clients doing that now with Freak Squad. We've progressed to the Bulgarian squat, and he was very strong at just doing squats. But
what's a Bulgarian squat? Just let people know, because most people don't know what.
That's when you have your back foot up on a bench, and your front foot's down below. So your back foot is elevated, and it just gives you a different stretch on the leg. But it also, when you kind of stand up from a squat, you get a bit of a rest. With a Bulgarian squat, you have a slight bend in your leg still, and it keeps the tension there. So you've got your back leg up on a bench or step, body straight, heels flat, same thing. But now you've got this load that's more emphasis on the quad, because you've got the back leg up, which gives you a stretch in the glute. It's just another advanced technique versus, you do a reverse lunge versus a forward lunge. Reverse tends to hit the glutes a little bit more. Forward can hit the quad. Now you're still hitting parts of the leg, but that's why we're changing variations. And again, lunges help with knee stability. So when Funk was saying he's got guys saying, I don't want to lunge, then you're not building your weakest link. And that helps for things like moving on a diagonal pattern. If you play a sport, if you're ball hockey, you're running after your kid or you're running with your dog, and keep in mind, you're not stepping in a pothole, but you should be able to move in that pattern. And that's that knee stability that you get from the lunge, which is crucial. And I see a lot of people that don't do lunges at all, or they do them really, really bad, and they don't understand the mechanism behind it.
That's where a coach has to come in. Like I never fault people who are attempting to do an exercise and they don't know how to do it. It's just they don't know how to do it. That's where we come in. That's where all of the personal trainers, all the people that take my certifications and all the certifications, like that's their role, right? If you know, like I don't fault them for that because they shouldn't know that. You know, I always say, how would they know? How would you know how to do a lunge? Like that's you do 9 to 5 in a office. You haven't trained in many years. There's no way they would know how to do a lunge. So I always put that on trainers, coaches. You know, us. Like that's our job.
We also have social media where you can look up this stuff and you could follow people like Funk and myself or Angela, you know, who will break stuff down for you and understand it. So I love watching coaches with videos with coaches that break it down. Not here's my leg workout, do this. I like it when they break it down because, again, unless you have a coach, you're right, you won't learn that. But there is information out there. There's two guys right here just saying it right now that can teach that type of thing. But again, it's that well, I don't know, I'm just not going to attempt it, and it's just like then you're missing out on the fundamentals that we're talking about. Just because you choose not to.
Yeah. And I'm gonna rebuttal what you said because I actually don't like people going on Instagram looking, because what happens is there are so many people on Instagram. There are influencers who are not certified coaches that look good. So if they go on there and they're just looking at certain people doing lunges, or you know what I mean, like, and then this person does a lunge differently than this person, it's overwhelming, and it's not conducive to what they want to do. I always advise you, specifically if you're a guy and you're older guy, get a coach, get a program that's already programmed for you that teaches you in the program how to do. Again, our margin for error is very small. We can't be relying on social media to teach.
No, and I totally agree. I don't want anyone to take this. What I was saying is there are specific coaches that I follow. Now I know what to look for in somebody when I'm following somebody. But again, you know, there are some really, really good people out there, but there's more really bad people out there, and it's filtering out all the nonsense that's out there. And I get to the point, this is funny, we're talking about it just earlier this week. I'm like off Instagram. I was just tired of just seeing some of the nonsense I was seeing out there. But then I go back and follow the people that I can follow, the certain people. So again, how does someone know that? They really have to just watch the video, you know, go to that person's website, see, yeah, totally.
Coach, invest in a coach. That's my advice.
Yeah,
invest in a coach. There's too much shit out there. I would invest. You got Flex right here. Invest in Flex. He'll help you. He'll take you through and teach you how to do all those exercises 100%. But like the thing I want to talk about is why are we doing lunges? Like lunges are so important because a lunge, of course, walking up and down the stairs, etc. But like it strengthens our lower body. Like it strengthens not only the quads, but it's like our quads, our hamstrings, our glutes, our calves, the mobility in our ankles, right? Like that's all. And each lunge exercise that you do, you can change up. You just by changing up. Like if I do a lunge,
just the direction,
or if I do a lunge standing up, or knees over toes, a lunge. Like that one movement, just changing your body will either focus more on the quad, focus more on the glute, focus on your knee strength and your ankle mobility, right? So just that one movement, but it's also a unilateral movement, right? Remember Flex talked about balance. Your balance, like you have to balance out your body, right? Like we're always imbalanced. There's one side's always weaker than the other. One arm's always weaker. If you work at a job where you're doing the same thing over and over again, obviously this one side's going to be overworked and either going to be weaker because it's broken down or stronger because you're doing the same thing over and over again. But what a lunge does is it helps you balance. It teaches you stability, because if you're doing just a stationary lunge, just having to go up and down in a stationary lunge, you have to embrace your core and you have to be able to stay stable with the knee straight, toes pointing forward, the mobility in your ankle. Right?
Yeah.
A lunge enhances the mobility in your ankle, which is huge. If you have immobility in your ankle, that causes knee pain. 100%. If your ankle
and even back pain. Everything goes from your feet all the way to your back, and then
100%.
even with a lunge, now you're in that transverse plane because you can do a diagonal lunge, a side lunge. So now you've broken the plane of just squatting up and down. Then you start to you start off with body weight walking lunges where you're learning to not just be stationary. So again, when people are like, "Oh, this is boring. I don't know how to get stronger at something." Sometimes you pull back on the weight, you learn a new technique. Like you said, it's very, very important to understand that if you have a weak ankle, hip, and knee, it's going to fault everything up above you that you don't even realize. Your posture, your neck, your back, because of the fact that you've got this imbalance in your legs. Everything's all connected. So what was that?
Lunge. I just got a couple more things. So I just wanted to. So when we do this, I just want to break down what exercises would I use for the specific. Like for me, if I'm doing a functional strength with a lunge, it's basic forward lunges, heavy, or actually, I start with reverse lunge heavies because reverse lunge is an easier exercise to master than a forward lunge, walking forward and looking back. So heavy, reverse lunges. If I'm doing hypertrophy, it's going to be Bulgarian. It's going to be all of the different, like we talked about, side lunge, curtsy lunge. If I'm doing power, they're going to be jumping lunges. I may do like a heavy reverse lunge with dumbbells and then drop those and then go into jumping lunges after, like a little bit of contrast training. And then of course for power or for conditioning, it would just be all of the different lunge variations, but faster, of course. Jumping lunge.
One of the ones I use for conditioning with my guys, once they get the front and forward lunge down packed, is I have them do a reverse lunge and then step forward to a front lunge without even touching their foot down. So now we're working in that pattern towards a walking lunge, and you'll be surprised how many people are very strong going back and forward, but when then you are told lunge back, push off that front leg, try not to touch the toe and step forward, which I call a step through lunge, then it's a totally different game, right? It's a totally different game. And now the endurance increases because you're really doing two lunges in one rep, back and forward. So again, these are just, you get that pen down, guys, and start writing this down because this is nuggets. You're like, oh, I didn't know I can do reverse, then step forward. I didn't know I can
actually add side, I go forward, back.
Side, exactly.
And then it's a try.
Yes.
Lunge.
Yes. And remember, now you're in that transverse plane, that round plane versus just going front and back. And lunges, most people hate them because they burn. Well, that's the idea. You should not do an exercise just because you don't like the burn. That's, my guys don't do that. I don't think your guys do that. But majority of people just won't add it in because it's like, oh, that was killer. Yeah, exactly. It's what you want.
Yeah. So let's move to the push exercises. So push or press, same thing. These are pushing movements. Yeah. But one thing about the pushing movement is that the pushing movement actually happens on two different planes, horizontal and vertical.
Yes.
So you have pushing movements, but then you have to break, you can break those up and should break those up and must break those up into vertical and horizontal. So like pushing would be, like a horizontal would be like a bench press, anything like bench press, dumbbell flies, those are push. Like push-ups, obviously push-ups, anything, that you're pushing in a horizontal push. Vertical push is overhead press. So now overhead press, shoulder press, push press, Arnold press, handstand push-ups for those who are a little frisky.
Who want to hang upside down.
And then push movements are actually movements that hit the chest, shoulders, and tries, right?
Yes.
So yeah, and any tries too, like
And again, you want to stay away from isolating movements, like a fly. Like we talked about leg extension, leg curls. That's not fundamental because you're using one joint. The push movements, whatever angle you're on, inclined for upper chest, straight up for shoulders, flat for chest, you're incorporating your wrist, your elbows, your shoulders. More muscles involved, compound movements, the more strength you build and functionality you build. So again, I see people all the time go right to the pec deck machine. I never see them do any push movements. Why, I don't know, but again, you're limiting yourself to, that's an accessory workout. So you got like push, you got push-ups, barbell, dumbbell squat, presses, incline, tricep extensions. It's a push in the sagittal plane. Vertical as well, heavy shoulder presses or light shoulder presses. All that incorporates the push or the press movement, which again is very, very important, very, very important to have that push strength as well. We'll talk about the pull in a minute, but the push, I think a lot of people do a lot of pushing and not enough pulling, as we said. Sure. And we'll talk about that,
Yeah. I like so for me with the push too, but I do have ISO. I just focus on the movement as opposed to compound versus isolation, because I know that some trainers, and it's not nothing wrong, but the other thing about functional training is it gets put into a bucket with only compound movements make it functional, but that's totally not right, because if I'm picking something up, like if I'm picking up this cup and I'm picking it and raising it up, this is a functional movement I'm doing throughout the day. I'm picking up my kid from the collar because they just did something. So just doing compound movements that are functional is not enough as far as I'm concerned. I add the side ladder. In fact, yesterday, as part of my functional strength, I had an accessory functional movement, which was the lateral raise.
Yes.
I do skull crushers, those type of things too, because they are push. But yes, of course you're gonna Here's the other thing: if you have a good functional programming, you're gonna build muscle. I have functional hypertrophy, which again incorporates the movements, but the focus is hypertrophy. The focus is building muscle. So I'm going to still make sure that the movement patterns are there.
Yes, and again, using accessory movements or isolation movements can also help with muscle growth. And we talked in our first podcast about supersets and all that type of stuff, where you would do maybe a lateral raise first and then a press. So now you're getting the compound movement and the isolation movement. And again, with most of my guys, once they get into the next couple months, we start to add in more isolation. We want to do, even with the shirt you're wearing now, the Funk Flex program we did, the first 4 weeks was all compound type of movements, and we used isolation accessory movements in the later phases. Once you build your core strength, my thing is just most people tend to go right to the accessory movement and never do the compound, versus if you only do the compound, which I don't. I love incorporating both as well. After a 4 to 6 or 8 week period, you can start adding it in, because you're right. But when you go to grab a kid, I'd be very surprised if anyone can grab a kid and lift it this way. But you still need that strength. You still have to, you still got to use your body, squat down and lift the press as well. But accessory movements for sure can hyper inflate that workout, get it, the muscles to fatigue differently. Those are more advanced techniques. But what we're saying here is, again, making sure that, just involving as many muscles as possible in exercise will help build that core strength almost immediately. And then as the weeks go on, I personally like adding in the accessory stuff. Because people I have in my program who are in it now or new clients, they all do accessory stuff first. They're already doing it. I go the other way, going, let's do this first. Oh, okay. And then add that in. So, so anything left on the push there?
well, yeah.
No,
So
I'm
for
just saying,
strength,
just throwing a ball, pushing a door open, like that's how it relates to, if you're an MMA fighter, you pushing someone away or pulling someone in when you do the pull, it needs to mimic life as well. You should be able to throw a ball. And if you're like, I don't care if you're ripped and jacked, if you can't throw that ball, then you've got something going on there. You need to be able just to
rotation.
get muscle bound, they get a little too, yeah.
Yeah. So so for strength, if I'm doing a strength, so like I said, I'm just doing a strength block now. For my push or press, it's obviously dumbbell press, very heavy dumbbell press, 5x5 with dumbbell press, bench press, and shoulder presses. Now I don't generally do shoulder presses as the main 5x5 because the dumbbell shoulder press, again, I don't like overloading the shoulders because they're very small muscles. So I use it in the strength, but that's the exercise that I would use is either a military press, which again, I don't like using the barbell, or a shoulder press. Actually, I shouldn't say I don't like using the barbell because I like using the barbell for pulling, but I don't like using the barbell for like overhead press.
And again, it's preference. You've got shoulder injuries. I've got an issue where my range of motion isn't that super great. But again, with your push movements, your shoulders get a lot of workout. It's a small muscle. You don't need to load them up super, super heavy for them to grow, especially off the bat. I see people trying to always do really, really heavy shoulder press. And it's just they're compromising so many things just trying to lift that weight. I'm like, bro, you got the shoulders involved with your back rowing, your pull-ups, everything, Same with biceps and triceps too, that push on the tricep. Yes, there's some great exercises, but any of these pushing exercises will develop. There's some guys that have massive arm thickness and strength that have never done a curl in their life. It's just dips and push-ups. Gymnastics. Look how a gymnastics person looks, right? Super lean and strong. And they can hold themselves up, and their shoulders are strong. It's from the training that they've done basically around the shoulders versus just specifically. And again, I'm not saying I have workouts in my program that specifically, if you want to develop your shoulders more, here you go. But all that pushing and pulling, you are getting quite a bit done versus just trying to load up with very, very heavy weight and doing it incorrectly. And there's advantages to barbells and dumbbells as well, but you have to be very, very, very careful with that stuff.
Yeah. So let's go to pull now. So why don't you start us off with your pull, your idea of pull exercises?
First of all, pulling is going to engage your lats, your back, your traps, shoulders as well, your biceps, lat pull downs, dumbbell rows, barbell rows. And again, you can change the grip, the angle. You could be off a flat bench, up on an angle, seated cable rows at the gym. Now in our program, because we do things more dumbbell and body weight, even band rows if you're warming up. Rowing really helps with good shoulder strength because our rear delts, which is the back of the shoulder, do get a lot of work on the rowing. Many people don't do a lot of rear delt exercises, which again is a fundamental thing. But again, I look at it like it really helps with grip strength. Playing on the monkey bars, like just things like that, hanging from a tree. But that back pull strength, because remember the back is the largest muscle of the upper body, is key. And like you were saying earlier, we do a lot of push, not a lot of pulling, because we can't see the muscle. And the back is very hard to train when you're pulling because it doesn't burn like the chest. You feel it in the arms. You usually tend to feel in the arms when you're doing it. And then the next day you're like, oh, I felt my back. That's why a lot of people give up on their back. They don't think through the movement. They don't change it. Because they just think one back exercise is enough. Your back has got many parts to it, upper, lower, and stuff like that. So the pulling, very, very, very important. And I like starting sometimes quite a few of my programs with pulling when you have the most energy. Most people like to start with the push right away. You see them go to the bench. I like to sometimes, after I've done my mobility, start with my back first, because we've always just been like, go do chest first, go do chest. And then when your energy is kind of dipped because of all 5 sets of chest, you're not going to do 8 sets of back because you're tired. So I like prioritizing my my larger muscles that need it first. So like legs and back first sometimes versus the chest. That's just me. Just me. I like to throw in the back first sometimes when my energy is there because I'm going to do more sets.
Right. Yeah, the pull for me, like Flex said, is, I mean, it's imperative. And pulling, again, is if you guys think of it this way. Think of it as all of the things that you pull or pick up from the floor. So if we have to mow the lawn, right? We have to use a snow blower to do the snow if you live in a place that snows. So you've got to pull, right? We're pulling to start things. We're pulling, things from the ground. We're always pulling. We're doing a lot of picking things up, and pulling towards us, pulling our kids towards us. So
that's why most people have issues shoveling snow, because they got to pull the weight off of the ground. You know what I mean? Right, yeah. It's as simple as that. Just a simple pull. They're used to the pushing of the snow. You push the snow, but once you pull it, then it's a different story. Completely different story.
Yeah, I was pushing that snow out, and then 10 minutes later, it was back to the snow was back on the ground. Anyway, so pulling, just like pushing, has vertical and horizontal exercise, but you're looking at pull-ups and barbell rows, like I said, and dumbbell rows for sure. The different dumbbell row variations. You've got, you got resistance band rows, cable rows. You got pull downs. So anything like a pull down would be like a pull down is an example. Now, curls, any type of curl, because like I said, I'm different, a little bit different from Flex. I just do the pull movement. So bicep curls are in there, hammer curls are in there. Anything that is a pull movement for me. It's not just back. For me, it's like biceps and forearms, which people get like, oh shit, I didn't realize biceps were a pull. But yes, they are. When we're talking about horizontal pulling, we are talking about like barbell rows and T-bar rows and dumbbell rows and the cable rows. And when we're talking about horizontally, it's pull-ups. So I mean pull-ups, chin-ups, lat pull-downs, all of those things that you're kind of in a vertical, pulling yourself up or pulling something down in a vertical plane, and horizontally is more rowing. Whether you're bent over and rowing, it's rowing towards the body.
Yeah, and rowing will work. Rowing will always work the middle of the back a little bit more. Back thickness, and chin ups and pull downs work on the width. So some people are like, if it comes to aesthetic thing, they want the wider back. That's how you get it as well. But again, it helps stretch out the shoulder blades. It helps to incorporate the rear delts, and the trapezius muscles are triggered differently from a row and a pulling. So that's why you incorporate both a rowing, and a pull-up. Yeah, exactly. Because again, I see guys that will come in and they'll just row and that's it. And it's like, oh, there's so many angles and variations. But again, secondary muscles, your biceps, definitely. And in one of my phases, my functional phase, they're doing a row, and then they got to go into a hammer curl and then into a press. So they're using the push-pull movement all in one pattern, which later on you get more advanced. But yeah, they are walking out of there going, man, I felt that everywhere, and all I did was pull, hammer, and press, and they're like, they feel it in the legs because they got to hold the weight up and push the weight up. So pulling again, I think it's probably the most underrated exercises easily, because everyone loves the push, except for the biceps. That's the one they'll pull. You know what I mean? They love that pull.
At least one you need to do, because if you think about it, just in our balancing our body, right? We're always hunched over, and so we need to open up. Right, we need to open up our bodies, which means we need to start focusing on a lot of our posterior chain, right? Our posterior chain starts from the top and goes all the way down, but we have to do exercises that are going to balance out. You're doing a lot of push-ups. Every time you do, the amount of push-ups that you do, you should be doing Superman, like lying on the floor prone,
Yep.
body up, and you should be doing, if you do 20 push-ups, do 20 Superman like rows. I call them presses. But you're just on the ground and you're just literally, you're gonna feel that in your rear delts and your rhomboids, because if you're put like for instance in my kettlebell burpee program, because they're doing burpees every day, part of the programming is, okay, you have to activate the rear delts.
Yes.
We have to hit those rear delts, because if you're doing this all the time, then this happens. You have that overload here in the front delt, no rear delt, which most people don't have rear delt strength.
No,
rear delt
not at
strength.
all.
Have rhomboids, they don't have lats. And so as we get older, because again, we've just been working on computers, driving, just on our phones now, our posture is horrible. So functional training actually helps to balance your posture, balance your imbalances with, different types of, pull variations. We can do dumbbell pulls, pulling this way towards your hips. We can do bent over. I do pulls this way, rows, but they can also be bent over flies, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the rowing, just your angle of your hands, you can do reverse rows, which hit different parts of your posterior, your back.
Exactly.
We all need to train. We all need to get stronger, specifically as we're getting older. Remember, guys, this is not about like the byproduct of all of this type of training is going to be your look. You're going to have you're going to have the Greek god aesthetics. It's just we're training it in a different way so that we can make sure that we have functional strength for every day
Yes.
work. Right? Every day
I mean, you can't just look the part. You got to be the part, and that's why when you see some of these guys on stage and they're 3% fat and they look like G.I. Joe action figures, they're at their weakest there, right? They're at their weakest. They don't really look the part. I've watched bodybuilders be out of breath just walking upstairs because they're not used to that. They're just used to doing always in one plane and vice versa. We are bodybuilding here. We're trying to build our bodies stronger. But going right back to what you said with the Supermans, in one of my phases, you got to go and do Supermans. And a lot of my guys are like, man, that was tough because they weren't used to using their body weight in supine position or prone or supine. My God, I'm prone. Yes, thank you. And lifting the body up and just using gravity. And you're only a few inches off the floor versus, oh man, I can row all day like this. That's where we see there's that weak link in your chain because you're not incorporating, the two limb raise, the Superman, the pull movement. And again, we're delts out of sight, out of mind. I always feel a lot of people, if they can't see it, they just don't train it as much. It's always whatever's in front, which we want to get you guys to understand. It's got to be everything, not to worry about that.
So yeah, for sure. So next is a hip hinge. So this is the one that this is the I think the most valuable because we are always bending over. We're always bending over, and we need to be hinging over, right? Hip hinge is the movement is done by the hinge. Your movement starts at the hips. And you're bending at the hips, but making sure that your spine is neutral. That is the key here. You're not bending over and rolling over on your back. Not bending over with your back. In a rounded position, you are in a neutral position when bending over, which means it's a hip hinge. So how I kind of explain the hip hinge to people is like when we did our retreat, I'm teaching the kettlebell swing for people who've never done kettlebell swings before. Teaching them how to hinge, I say point your butt to the wall. That's what you want to do. So you want to karate chop your hips and let your butt lead and let your butt point to the wall. And that alleviates people starting from the knee, like starting from a squat and like starting from their knees and then bending over. They actually stay tall, and now your butt is going back first, but you're still in a neutral position. It's like, okay, that's the hinge. and that is your power position. So like I played volleyball all my life. So I'm not bending before I jump. I'm not bending over and squatting. I'm hinging, bending my knees slightly, hands back, and ready to explode. Like that's, you can see like basketball players, when a basketball player who can jump very high is going to block a shot. You can see them, they're setting up the block, like they're just waiting for the person, and they're hinging, ready to take the 1-2 step and just and squat away. They're not squatting down and jumping straight up, right? They're exploding. They're using their posterior chain, their glutes, their hamstrings, like the lower back, which is why we hip hinge, and focusing on that posterior chain, which like you said before, it's another part of the muscle body that we don't train because we can't see it. Most people's glutes. So listen up. Like this is another one you want to write down. Like write it down, then put it on your computer, on your fridge. Train my glutes. That's what I want. Train my glutes. And we're not talking about the booty, we're talking about your glutes. The glutes are the second biggest muscle group in the body next to your quads. Train your glutes, because your glutes, when they're not turned on, because they're turned off all the time, I mean, you're standing, so you could just squeeze your glutes and really...
I've been squeezing this whole time.
Yeah, I'm sitting, so my glutes are turned off. Yes, I can do a little bit of bouncing. In general, they're turned off, and most of the time our glutes are turned off. We need and because we don't know how to activate the glutes, even if we're standing, walking around, going up and down stairs, working, our glutes are turned off because we don't know how to turn them on. And when your glutes are turned off, which are, like I just mentioned, are the second most powerful or the second biggest muscle group in the body, and your glutes are turned off, that means that when you're lunging, when you're squatting, when you're deadlifting, when you're doing anything that requires that lower body specific, the lower back takes over. The knees take over. Your hips have to adjust. So now you're getting hip mobility issues. Like when you turn your glutes on, it's a different story. It's like, okay, my glutes are turned on. Now when I'm squatting, my quads and my glutes, which are what you need to use, are going to be engaged because I've already activated them. No more knee pain, right? Like lunging, no more knee pain because the glutes are turned on. Running, like specifically running. When you're running, I always do glute activation before I run because I need to use my glutes. Power. So deadlifts, Romanian deadlifts, single leg deadlifts. That's like my biggest, thanks to Angela. But that is my biggest movement. That is the movement that every man, so write down glutes, write down single leg deadlift. Like that is like that should be the foundation movement. If you can't do single leg deadlifts, there's problems. There's going to be big problems. It's going to be very difficult for you as you get older. You need to do single leg deadlifts. You need to know how to. Single leg deadlift is just bent, hinging at the hips and sticking one leg up and balancing with the other leg as your base with a slight knee bend, right? And then being able to use the hamstrings and the glutes to pull yourself back up. Because I'm figuring out most people probably aren't watching this. They're actually listening. But like it's just, hinge at the hips. And as you're hinging at the hips, you're going to be putting your leg back, holding, knee straight, and then pulling yourself back up with the glute and the hamstrings that are on the ground. That is if you can't do that, you're in trouble.
Well, because that also works balance and stability, which again, most people don't really want to think about that. They just think about moving the weight, but it's like you need to get the stability, you need to get the balance. I got clients even when they first start or when they're guys in my program, I always say, imagine there's a rope around your waist and someone's pulling your hips back. So when you do your lunge, same thing. I always say, think that someone's pulling back first.
Yeah.
And there's even times where I sometimes was forgetting about activating those glutes. So in my warm-up, all my guys and your guys, we have warm-up, we have mobility days. And on the warm-up, there are I've seen you do it, myself and Angela, glute bridges in my warm-up just to activate the glutes. I haven't had a bad back in months because I've been using more. It's funny how you said the single leg deadlifts, the glute activations. Even when I go and want to do barbell bench press, I'm actually bridging up on the bench. So
100%.
I'm bridging up on the bench because I want my glutes activated. Most people walk by and go, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I want to hit my lower chest," but I said this also activates my glutes. And I just found things got so much better by just me concentrating on just waking them up by doing some glute bridges, single leg bridges in my warm up. So when I get to the hinge and the hip,
yes,
100%, 100%.
Yeah, side plank, and then
And it gives you a nice looking butt too. Like your butt's gonna look good. That's the byproduct of it. But again, the glutes, man, they control everything. They control even if you have upper back issues, it's controlled by the middleman, which is the glute, right in the middle. Right in the middle. But again, like Funk was saying, just concentrate on leading with the bum. There's a rope or elastic band and someone's pulling you from the waist back first, and back, you not rounded like this, you should be able to have it nice and straight. And just concentrate on the movement. And then you start to add weight as time goes on, especially when you get to the single leg deadlifts. Don't be grabbing a heavy dumbbell and falling over. Build up to it. Like those step through lunges. You build up to it where you're like, oh, this is different. I'm on one leg now. Yeah. And then you see which side is your weaker link. You'll see some side. And sometimes people might think it's the not dominant side. For me, my weaker glute was actually the right side. Strange enough. Maybe because it's just overcompensating. Who knows, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So deadlifts, Romanian deadlifts, good mornings, kettlebell swing variations for sure, glute bridges. Those are the basic hinge movements. With deadlift variations being the ones that you're going to use in strength. Functional strength, kettlebell swings for power and conditioning, and then you can throw in the bridges, the Romanian deadlifts, and other variations of hinges for like hypertrophy. Because like Flex said, we also do want to have that nice butt. Our wives are. If you're an older guy who's looking for the younger girls,
it's a bad byproduct. The byproduct is a nice firm tush, but
the one thing I wanted to say about the gentleman who posted the video, one of the exercises, because I'm assuming he's in phase two. It must be in phase 2, but anyway, is a single leg deadlift. So that was one of the exercises, and I was presently surprised that he was able to do it. I said, your SDLs are nice, just focus more on, making sure that you put all the weight onto that leg. That's
the front leg. Yeah.
I was happy to see that. Like, I love when this happens. In fact, I may make a call out. The only thing is I gotta be able to go in. I have so many guys in that program that I have to go in there and actually critique, which takes a lot of time. But anyways, it's just the point I think we're both trying to make is the hinge is important. The single leg deadlift is important, and like Flex said, thinking of someone that has a string and they're literally pulling your butt back, but remember it's the neutral spine. Your back is straight.
Yes.
Do not, and listen. Before we get to the carry and the core, there are crossovers in some of these movements. Like there are movements. That you're like, let's talk about the bent over row. The bent over row, not on the bench. The bent over row has a hinge and a pull because you have to hinge to get into the position. Then, if you're doing it right, you have a squat, isometric squat hold, because when you're doing the bent over dumbbell row, right? I'm here and then I'm squatting down and then I'm rowing. Or if I'm doing gorilla rows, it's the same thing. I have to hinge first, squat. So now I'm in an isometric. Well, I wouldn't really say an isometric squat. I shouldn't say that because the squat generally is like this, and you're not rowing like that. So
yes,
it's really nice. But the hinge, you're an isometric hinge position.
but you've got the leg in the eccentric position, like the leg, the muscles being stretched as you're leaning forward, and it doesn't get any rest until you stand up straight. That's why with the pulling and the hinging, it's like one of the best posterior chain. Posterior chain is what we're talking, the back half of our body, the out of sight, out of mind. That's super, super important. And I think if most people can focus on that more, they'll find the exercises they do on the front of their body will definitely get better as well. Just always think about, getting the back half of you stronger, because that's what really keeps you up straight. As much as the chest looks great and the biceps and all that, your back, your glutes, your hamstrings, especially, and like I said, I haven't any back pain once I started including more activations. I was doing them, but I wasn't doing enough of it because I had to program myself differently and go, okay, I got something going on here, and just making sure that the glute is nice and tight. It's just waking it up. You think it's awake, but it's not.
It's awake when it's awake. Believe me.
Yes, you do.
Like, oh, okay, I get it now. Let's go to the kit where the time I realize it's an hour and 25 minutes. We're really grooving here. But the carry is the final like foundational movement in functional training, and that's literally like farmer's carry. Basically, what you're doing is you don't want side lateral flexion. So you do not want to be. No. So when you see people doing this as their freaking oblique exercise, the side bends, as that ab exercise. In fact, I have a video where I say, stop doing that exercise. It's literally the worst exercise you can do. Like you're literally actually adding muscle. If we want to look at it this way, logically, where's the last place you want to add muscle in your body is your tire, right? Like the you don't want muscle in your obliques like
bulging.
To make bulging.
Yeah.
Right? You want it strong. And how do you get it strong? By carries or anti-lateral flexion. So side planks. Carries just means you can carry 1 dumbbell, 2 dumbbells, walking. You can march. I do a lot of marching because a lot of people don't have access to really, really heavy dumbbells. Because if you're doing carries, you better be doing them super heavy. But you can do single, you can do racked, you can do overhead. They're just variations of that. But it is anti-lateral flexion. You do not want to be bending at the side.
Yeah, totally. And again, the abdominal, the obliques, getting your QL, which is the lower back muscles, really strong, which tend to get very weak from sitting. That's why I have a stand-up desk now, because I was just sitting a lot. Getting those muscles strong, and again, grip strength. You have
the weakest grip in the history of mankind right now. Well, and that's actually, sorry to interrupt. Grip strength is actually a indication of your health. If you have a strong grip strength, a strong grip, that there's been studies that correlate grip strength to overall health. Anyways.
Yeah. That's okay. And you know what? I just, when I go grocery shopping, I'm carrying those groceries up the hill. There's my carry, there's my load, my grip strength. People ask, well, what do you do for your forearms? Why are these some developed? It's from my grip strength, all the rowing, all the chin-ups, all the pull-ups. But with the core, we got different variations of planks. You've got, the pull, the what do you call it, hanging knees, where you got to grip your stuff, side plank, core. Like I said, for me, I always figure it's not just around the midsection; it's also just going up the back as well, for spinal strength. That spinal strength. And again, if you're always stuck doing one version and you're not doing it in a transverse movement, and you're just constantly always doing sit-ups and not doing a plank, not reaching out, not doing buzz saws, hollow holes, what are they called? Hollow holes? And then the anti-rotation, where you're doing something where you're not wanting your body to rotate. You're fighting the rotation, and there's exercises you want to rotate and there's ones you want to fight the rotation to build and then now we're talking posterior and posterior chain, front and back. That's why the core, if you do the core right, and I always see any of my guys online and people that I train, they start to sweat immediately. The sweat comes on being like, okay, I was sweating squatting or this, but if they do their core right, they're like, that's just so intense. And I go, that is the foundation, like really right in the middle. Again, there's accessories, stability ball, Bosu ball. You can, I'm talking just plain and simple, like planks, carries. So I just drew a blank here. Slice plank.
3 hard. Yeah. It's an endurance. This is an endurance episode. But finally, like for me, like I mentioned, jumping, explosive movements, jumping side to side, jumping up and down, broad jumps, then mobility crawls, a lot of animal movements, primal movements,
exactly.
And then balance as well, to balance and stability stuff to balance it out. But all in all, I think what we're really trying to say is, the functional training as you get older is a must, right? Ensuring that you have all of those 6 foundational movements in your programming, and then because remember, there's so many different variations, right? So it's just the movement. So instead of focusing on, okay, I did upper or lower, which you can still do that with functional, but in general, like, okay, like someone's asked me before, hey, do you have an upper and lower back or upper and lower body program, or do you have just biceps or tris, or now we're gonna go, okay, I want functional training so that I have a better life. I have a better everyday life, whether it's at home, whether it's at work, whether it's at sports. Like, functional training is how athletes train. Athletes need to train that way.
Well, yes. Right? And most of us always love how an athlete looks and how they perform. Remember I said earlier, 3 reasons why is we don't want to look a certain way, we want to look a certain way, and we want to be performing better. And for some people, the performance comes and then the other stuff comes. Like in my program, we work about the performance and the strength. And from that, you'll get leaner and stronger. And some programs are like, no, let's just do this and work on it. It's totally what each coach wants to do. But I always say to people, it's one of the 3. You can do all 3. But I like to always put in my guy's head, train for strength first, and the muscle build will come. Your arms will get stronger. You don't need to be doing a million curls. You can add them into your program, but again, have the basic functional patterns that we're talking about. Build on that, and again, both our programs tap into that, and we explain it to people. And I think most programs don't do that. They just say, here you go, just do it. Our coaching calls, these podcasts, we like to explain to people why. Not just say, here, do it because it's good for you. Because again, when you think about it, you're going to put that action. Exactly. You're going to be, what's the word I'm looking for? You're going to be more precise with your action.
You're going to be more focused, intense. It's called intention, right? Intention. You know why you're doing something.
Yes.
The reason why I'm doing this is because of this. Then you're going to have more intention in your training. You're going to have more focus on it. You're going to be able to relate. Oh, okay, this is exactly related to when I have to all day I'm pulling. I have to pull this buzzsaw all day long at the site. I'm a guy who uses a chainsaw. Sorry.
Yep.
Buzzsaw, whatever. So I'm always pulling, and yes, I do have. I'm always pulling on one side, but I have to focus on pulling on the other side, so balancing the body, right? And then doing movements that are gonna balance your body. If you're always pulling, then sometimes you may have to push, but also you want to be strong in that pull, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just in general, just the movements that we don't do and that we do. But Yeah. So you've been talking about your program. What is that program that if guys are listening? Do you have any? Wait, do you want to end off with something before I get you to your program?
No, I think we hit everything on the mark there.
I hope so.
Yeah, I mean, I have my Freak Squad training program, and it's a strength and muscle building program. Where I'm trying to teach people, there's no gimmicks, there's no fad diets, there's no cardio. Everything is built in the way that in each phase you are tapping in to a different part of training. Some phases are more power, some are more functional. And the reason why I have and built it that way is to keep people from being immune to their exercises. So I used my OTB outside the box training system, which we talked about those in our first podcast, where I love when people come in who've even trained their whole life and go, wow, this is so different, because again, they're not just going through the motion, they're learning. And I like my guys to be learning, not monkey see, monkey do. I've got guys that have finished the 15 months, they're still in it, and now they're building their own workouts. They send it to me, they go, hey, what do you think about this or that? And then I also do private coaching on there, which is really like something that most programs don't offer. I love coaching people, and I like breaking it down and making very specific for each person. And using, again, strength in the muscle building program, and really concentrating on, the fundamental foundation, which we talked about today, and how I love to just tweak and make something smaller different, and it's a completely different workout without overwhelming the client. And they go, wow, okay. Now I want them to learn. That's part of the process too.
So how do they find you with the freaks with your coaching, with your one-on-one coaching?
So you go to freaksquadtraining.com or freakmusclebuilding.com. Freakmusclebuilding.com really explains everything quite a bit. And in there is sorry.
I'm just going slowly so people.
Oh, sorry. Freakmusclebuilding.com. And, when I say freak, we want to freak people out with our results, freak our better health. It's not looking like a freak. That's why they're called the Freak Squad. And, I'm at FlexMarks on Instagram. So up there, I'm posting tons of stuff all the time. Technical advice, motivation, mindset, nutrition. Funk and I are very much the same, where he's got the pillars, I've got the demandments. There's the 10 commandments. I got the five commandments. I got the demandments. And we just want people at our age understanding that there's many attributes to fitness that we like to put all together in one, and not confuse people, stimulate, motivate, and eliminate, and move them on to the next phase of their life.
Awesome. And then if you are a man in your 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and you want a full program, nutrition, follow-along workouts, demos, a community of thousands of men who support each other, weekly coaching calls, hangouts on Fridays, just a complete program to help you transform your body, your life, and your mind, because we do mindset. In fact, this Sunday we're doing some mindset coaching. Go to over40alpha.com, $1 to join, and I will guarantee that in your first 30 days you will lose 5 to 20 pounds, and then I'll take you on that journey to changing your life. I want to thank you, Flex, for being on the call on this episode. I hope you guys love this episode. Again, please go into the Apple, whatever it is, and give this the 5, iTunes, I guess, or Apple Podcasts, and give this a 5 rating for us, please. Like, it really helps the podcast. It really helps me. It really helps the algorithm, and it really helps get these messages out to the men in the world. Because I want you to remember one thing: if you're still here at an hour and 37 into the podcast, we're put on this earth to provide, to protect, and to procreate. And no matter what you want or don't want, you are going to become the patriarch of your family as you get older. And you do not want your family taking care of you because you're sick in your 40s and your 50s and your 60s, draining the bank account, having to borrow money because dad, who's supposed to provide, protect, and build the kingdom, is sick because of diabetes, because of a stroke, because of high blood pressure, because of things that you can control, that you could have taken care of and you did not. Now you have a chance to do that. Stand up, Become the man you're supposed to be for your family, for yourself, and for those who love you. And come back here and listen to the next episode. Anyways, thanks so much, and we'll see you in the next episode. Get it done.